Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am going to discuss the subject of income tax. You know very well here, the income tax is a direct tax. Before going to the concept of the income tax, I would like to highlight or I would like to discuss the concept of tax. What is meant by tax and why it should be introduced and what are the different types of the tax. Then I will go with the income tax. Here the every government, either the state or the central, needs money to maintain the law, and in order to give some basic infrastructure to the citizen of India, they have to be make expenditure. To make the expenditure, the government need the revenue. The government has to collect the required revenue from the public in the form of tax. Then what is meant by tax here? The tax, in simple, it is nothing but the payment made by the public, or what we call assessee, to the government. Why that person is paying the tax to the government? Why we make the payment? We have to give, or we have to make the payment on the goods or services or business activities, or whatever the income is to be generated. Either it may be salary, either it may be house property, maybe from business or profession, or from capital gain, or from the other sources. In addition to this one, whenever you are purchasing any goods or services, or whenever you are any person who purchase a goods, who receive these services from another person, for that person has to pay the tax to the government. That's why here the tax is to be imposed by the government or levied by the government on supply of goods or services, or on the salary, or on the business activities, etc. The only the intention is to make public expenditure for the betterment of the livelihood of the citizen of India. The government has to incur the expenses. To meet these public expenses, you have to be collect the revenue, because here the government, the major source of the revenue is a tax, either direct tax or indirect tax. That's why here the government is to be focused on the different sectors, either it may be from business, either it may be from profession, either it may be from supply of goods or the supply of the services, or it may be from the salaries, etc. Therefore the government, or the tax, is divided into two types. One is direct tax, another one is indirect tax. All of you know here the direct tax, these are the tax. Here assessee can directly pay tax to the government. They should called as direct tax. Indirect tax means here an assessee or any person is not directly paying any tax to the government, Indirect tax is to be imposed on supply of goods or services. Except goods or services, suppose if the government is to be imposing the tax, that should be nothing but the direct tax. This is the concept of the tax. Comes to the here income tax. You know very well the income tax is a direct tax where an assessee or any person is paying directly tax to the government. That should be called as the direct tax, and the income tax is a form of direct tax. Here, what are the contents is to be covered under the first unit of the introduction of or introduction to income tax is the meaning, brief history of income tax, then some of the important terms is to be used under the Income Tax Act. As per the Income Tax Act, there are some definition to the important terms, that is the person, assessee, assessment, previous year, income, gross total income, deemed income, rate of income tax authorities, kinds of assessment, then assessment procedure, and then last one is the PAN, that is permanent account number. Let's begin with the meaning here. You know very well, already I discussed with you, the tax is a compulsory payment to the government levied on individuals for their income on goods, property, business, services, etc. This is the meaning of the tax. Once again, I repeat here, the tax is the compulsory amount or compulsory payment to the government levied on individuals on their income, goods, property, business, services, etc. The major source of the revenue to the government is tax. That's why here it is compulsory. The tax is mandatory to all. Whose the threshold limit, or what we call the income limit, is to be exceeding the prescribed by the central government. That time the every person assessee has to pay the compulsory amount or compulsory payment to the government, that should be called as the. Now, the brief history of income tax. You know very well here, the British government has ruled India for more than 400 years. During this time, the British has suffered from the financial difficulties. To overcome the financial difficulties, the British government has introduced some measurable steps, or the British government has taken temporary measurable steps to overcome from the financial difficulties. These temporary financial or measurable steps is become the permanent the tax system after 1886 by passing Indian Income Tax Act 1886. ಅಂದರೆ ಟೆಂಪ್ರರಿ ಫೈನಾನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಏನು ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಇತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಅದನ್ನು ಹೋಗಲ ಸಲುವಾಗಿ ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ಸ್ಟೆಪ್ಸ್ ಮೆಜರಬಲ್ ಸ್ಟೆಪ್ಸನ್ನು ಪರಿಹಾರೋಪಗಳನ್ನ ತೊಗೊಂಡ್ರವರು ಟೆಂಪ್ರರಿ ಅಂತೇಳಿ. ಆದರೆ ಅದೇ ಮುಂದೆ ಏನಾಯಿತು ಅಂದರೆ 1886 ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಇನ್ಕಮ್ ಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಸ್ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಕನ್ವರ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿಬಿಡ್ತು. Then, after that here, this act was amended for several times. ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ವೇಳೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅದು ಕೂಡ ಏನಾಯಿತು ಅಮೆಂಡ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಹಾಕೊಂತ ಹೋಯಿತು. ಇನ್ 1918 ಎ ನ್ಯೂ ಇನ್ಕಮ್ ಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಸ್ ವಾಸ್ ಪಾಸ್ಡ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಇಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ರೀಪ್ಲೇಸ್ಡ್ ಬೈ ಅನದರ್ ನ್ಯೂ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಟ್ ಇನ್ ದಿ 1922. ನೋಡಿರಿ, 1918 ಒಮ್ಮೆ ಅಮೆಂಡ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಅದಾದ ನಂತರ ಅಗೇನ್ 1922 ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಅಮೆಂಡ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ದೆನ್ ಹಿಯರ್ this act also underwent number of amendments from time to time here in order to simplify and prevent the evasion of tax, because here to evasion of the tax the government has to be go for the amendment of the existing tax policies or tax structure. And here the government of India has referred it to the Law Commission in 1956. After that, the new Income Tax Act 1961 was passed. Here, the new Income Tax 1961 has to be passed, and the Income Tax Act 1961 come into force during the 1962 1st April, and it will be applicable whole of India. And here, after making the act, Income Tax Act 1961, after came into force in India, there are several times it should be amended. And the Finance Act prescribes the rate of the income tax to be charged on total income. And here, the administration of direct tax is regulated by the CBDT, that is Central Board of Direct Tax. And here, whatever the rules is to be framed by the different, the board is to be collectively called as Income Tax Rules 1962. This is the brief history of the income tax in India. It should be origin from the British government. During the British government, now the every year or time to time the Income Tax Act 1961 is to be amended whenever it's required. Only to the main intention is to avoid tax evasion. This will be called as the brief history of tax. Thank you all.